The 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix was a soap opera filled with drama from the front end of the grid to the back, from McLaren to Red Bull to the Visa Cashapp Racing Bulls and all the way back down to Alpine. Of course, the weekend began with just the most depressing start as the rain fell in Q1. Sergio Perez crashed out, failing to advance out of Q1 yet again, and it wasn't even funny, it was genuinely just very sad to watch. I feel so bad for this man. And to start off with episode 1 of this incredible drama series that was the Hungarian Grand Prix, let's take it to the Red Bull camp.
Okay, calm down, Max.
As there was oh so much drama with Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen was, and honestly is, struggling for pace now. And quickly I want to add my own take on the situation before I delve into this race. When was it that Red Bull started to show that they were slowing down? When Adrian Newey announced that he would be stepping away from the team at the end of the season, and it's no shock because, of course, he would be getting less and less involved as we go on. So does this suggest that Red Bull will continue to decline? My verdict is, yeah, probably. But back to this race, where Max was forced to give a place back to Lando at the very beginning of the race, he immediately showed signs that he was going to be in the complaining mood, as he was saying that the FIA was introducing new standards of, okay, this is how we're going to race. And this would continue for the entirety of the race, as he was complaining about the car being bad, the strategy being bad, and other drivers on track not behaving fairly, namely Sir Lewis Hamilton. As Max fell back from the McLarens, sorry, I can't believe I'm saying that, he was fighting for the last podium position with a superior Mercedes. That too, I can't believe it. Of Lewis Hamilton, as he was seemingly feeling reminiscent of his 2021 self, he got extremely aggressive and wasn't taking any prisoners, ultimately getting himself in a little bit of trouble. At one time, Lewis was clearly ahead going through the long left-hander through Sector 1. Max didn't want to concede, so he ended up driving off the track, at which point he hopped on the radio to tell GP, oh, he pushed me off the track, and GP was very quick at this point to acknowledge, you know what, I'm not going to put up with your nonsense anymore, as he said along the lines of, no mate, you were behind at the apex, pretty much just shut up and get on with it, stop complaining. And Max was just not having it with the strategy at all, as he was constantly yapping on the radio and complaining about the team, saying that they've F this and F that and
completely race. No, mate, don't give me that. You guys give me this strategy, okay? I'm trying to rescue what's left.
And to top it all off, when he was finally going for a move on Lewis Hamilton into turn 1, he looked up pretty badly and made contact with them, taking a whole new meaning to Red Bull gives you wings, as he flew up into the air and landed rather uncomfortably, bouncing off the track and absolutely waving goodbye to that podium position. After a little bit more complaining, GP then called Max childish over the radio, and rightfully so, put him in his place. Does it end there? No, it doesn't, of course. No, because Max Verstappen was frustrated with how the team had been treating him throughout the race, and a little bit childishly took his frustrations out as he was venting in the media pen after the race. Watching this as a fan felt like when you were a kid at a friend's house and they were getting told off by their parents, and you just sit there like uncomfortable and unsure of what to do. Very, very awkward, but also we kind of love it too. Okay, after that, I think I don't want to jump into the McLaren drama just yet because I'm not mentally prepared for that. So let's address the next episode of this drama series, which was the Visa Cashapp Racing Bulls Daniel Ricciardo drama. It's no secret to anyone that Daniel Ricciardo is in a pretty tough spot in his career. It feels that every race is fighting for his career, and it is pivotal that he must have a good weekend every weekend. And after a decent qualifying where he would start in 9th position, he also had a pretty lovely race up until the first pit stop, which would absolutely throw him into the depths, as he would come out in P18 stuck behind ample traffic, and it stayed that way for most of the race. He was stuck behind slower cars in front in a massive DRS train, and he wasn't too happy about it at all. And due to his earlier run of pit stops, he was left out to dry when he was actually fighting up for the last few points positions, as he got overtaken by both Aston Martins towards the end of the race. It just really was a bit of a calamity for someone who has hopefully started to find a bit more form. And most of the drama from this comes from Daniel's response, as he was extremely vocal about the situation, stating how disappointed he was and that it was one of the most frustrating weekends he's had in his entire career. And it's safe to say he's had a few. Meanwhile, his teammate Yuki Tsunoda ended up in the points, finishing P9, roughly about where Daniel should have been. So it was a bit of a kick to the guts from what was a bad team call from both Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Alright. Now, episode 3 of the Hungarian Grand Prix drama, thankfully, is a bit of a short one, as all you really need to say is Alpine. We thought you had come back and you were doing a little bit better, but this race, you've just fallen straight back, so quite a disappointing event for them. And before we address the elephant in the room in episode 4, it's time that I take you back to episode 1, which was, of course, the Red Bull drama. As Sergio Perez had a terrible qualifying, starting in P18, you have to give a man credit where it's due. He had a pretty decent race, fighting back to P7 and actually finishing in front of George Russell. But do I I think that's enough to save his career? Sadly, no, I don't think it is, as he needs to really improve his qualifying form, and I genuinely think that Spa, the Belgian Grand Prix this coming weekend, might just be a deciding round for him. So stay tuned for the sequel next week. And now the moment we've all been waiting for, or maybe dreading, McLaren, McLaren, McLaren. How do you manage to have the most successful weekend for your team in 3 years and have it also be the most damaging for your reputation? How have they messed up a 1-2? So let's recount what happened. Oscar had a fabulous start, jumping into first place by the end of lap 1, in fact, by the end of turn 1. He managed to pull a decent gap to Lando by about 3.5 seconds by the time of their first pit stops, which they did in fact pit Norris first in front of Piastri, which was already looking a little bit dangerous for him. I don't know why Piastri didn't go first, but it didn't turn out to be too bad, as Piastri, by the time he had pit, was still ahead, just. All until Lewis Hamilton pit on lap 40, 10 seconds behind Lando Norris in P2 when he went into the pits. And McLaren, they didn't want Lando Norris to be undercut by Lewis Hamilton, so they wanted to pit him as soon as possible, right? Only they waited until lap 45 to bring him in, which left 4 laps potentially to have brought Oscar in and have him maintain the lead from the undercut, and also keep both of them safe from Hamilton. Sure, they wanted to stay on that set of tyres for as long as possible, so then, you know what, bring Oscar in on lap 44 or 45 and bring Lando in on lap 46, because you know what, when he pitted on lap 45, he was very clear of Lewis Hamilton by the time he came out the pits, over 8 seconds in front of the Mercedes driver. It was such an unnecessary amount of time to cover Lewis Hamilton, because if you needed to bring him in that urgently on that exact lap and couldn't wait another one to let Oscar come in first, I don't understand how they thought the undercut of that lap alone would be worth 8 seconds, especially not enough to completely create what happened next. They chose to pit Norris first, giving him the superior strategy because they were afraid of Lewis Hamilton getting the undercut, which okay is fair enough, especially from a team's perspective, but it is unbelievably fair on Oscar, who should have been pitted first to maintain their order. When they bring Lando in, they immediately get on the radio and tell Oscar what's going on, that they are covering Hamilton and they're not to worry about it because when the time comes, they'll reinstate the order. So with Norris pitted on lap 45, surely Oscar comes in on 46. No, they went for 47, giving Lando ample time to have cleared him by then by a comfortable margin. Oscar comes out of the pits around 3 seconds behind Lando. Now, if you're McLaren here and you've successfully covered off Lewis Hamilton and there's 22 laps to go at this time, it's time for a little strategy quiz. Do you A, give the position back straight away and allow them to fight fairly to the end with about 20 laps left? B, do you let them keep the positions that are right now, let Lando have the win and allow Oscar to hopefully try and fight his way back through? Or C, let Lando run away with it, create heaps of tension, leave it to the last few laps, holding Lando at gunpoint and guaranteeing Oscar wins and making it seem like the biggest charity case of the 21st century? C, it's gotta be C, because why wouldn't it be? And sure, while Lando didn't back down easily, it wasn't entirely his fault because he wasn't told clearly what to do. It wasn't an instruction, no, because McLaren honestly put him in the worst position possible by not telling him to give the place back immediately, but knowing full well they were going to make sure Oscar got the win at the end anyway, meant that they were setting him up for failure not only on track, but off track too. How has he lost the race win and still come out looking the villain? It was honestly embarrassing. While I see from the team's perspective they wanted to guarantee a 1-2, the situation was played out in the most damaging way possible. If they made Lando give the position back at lap 50 at least, they would have had 20 laps then to be able to fight fairly for the win, and honestly there's a chance that Lando could have won anyway. But instead they actually gave Lando no chance of winning by ensuring that he stayed out in front, because why would he give the position back if he's not told inherently to do so, but then having it taken away from him when he thought that there was a chance he could have kept it? It's just so unfair. What about the way that they told him to give it back to? They didn't tell him clearly, they made him feel guilty to the point where he gave it back, and obviously they were kind of gaslighting him and putting him through emotional blackmail, saying, think about Oscar, what if you were in his position? You're gonna need him at the end of the season. You'll regret it if you don't do it. Do the right thing. No, how about you just have the backbone to tell him to give the place back? And I know he wouldn't like that. They don't want to upset him. So instead they're dancing around what actually needs to be done because of the fear of upsetting Lando, which has just created an even worse situation for themselves. And granted, everything that they were saying was completely rational, fair, it makes sense. However, that's the discussion you have after the race and not in the heat of the moment with the driver. It is not to be used as an instruction for the driver. You don't have to justify everything. And they weren't even saying what was happening and then justifying. They were only giving the justification and then letting Lando make his own decision, like gentle parenting. This is racing. Oscar was the faster driver generally throughout the race, and obviously towards the end, Lando was pulling away, and I don't think Oscar was going to catch up. However, I feel like a little bit of that came from Oscar's complacency and Lando's stubborn push to make a point. And now, respect to Lando for giving the place back in the end, but due to the way it was handled, no one will give him any credit for it because he resisted it so much. It feels like when your sibling was forced to give you an apology when you were younger, Yeah, and you're looking at them going, I know you don't mean this, shut up. But again, this was all McLaren's fault for managing it so poorly. So Oscar wins and he apologizes because he feels so guilty for what's happening and doesn't feel like he deserves it, which is so sad for any win, let alone your first win in Formula 1. McLaren have cast a shadow over this day for Oscar, which should have been full of so much celebration, ridden with negativity. And now, sorry, to bring it back to Lando, I have to say this. Absolutely, he is rightfully upset, and who could blame him since it was all out of his control, but it was clear that he might have needed a few minutes after the race to calm down before speaking to anyone, as in the cool-down room, he got extremely defensive. Lewis Hamilton was complimenting how quick their car was, to which Lando responded defensive, thinking that Lewis was trying to take away from their success, saying, well, you had a quick car 7 years ago. And then Lewis says, yeah, I know. So then Lando goes, well, we've got the quick car now, and it was kind of just all very embarrassing, as Lewis then, obviously, cool head in the room, can then point out, I was just trying to compliment your car, mate. Calm down. It was honestly such an awkward watch, because at the end of the day, you can just see from an outsider perspective that Lando is extremely riled with negativity, and again, fair enough, but he just needed to take a step back in that moment and regulate what was going on and just go, yeah, alright. Cool. Now that that's all done, let's be real for a second. And yes, I probably do have a very slight bias to Oscar Piastri being an Australian, but my boy Lando, love you too. But the reality is, Lando Norris is probably the only driver that could genuinely fight Max Verstappen for the Drivers' Championship this season. So there is a reason to favor him in situations going forward. And I know Oscar is aware of this and probably respects it too, but I don't think that should apply in situations like this when Oscar is already leading. And to be fair, McLaren didn't want to do it, so they didn't, but they fucked around and it ended up like this. They have a car capable of winning, of course, the Constructors' Championship now with two really strong drivers, but also it's seeming like they could have a chance of getting the drivers too. While slim, it's there. So hopefully it's smooth sailing from here on out for the team, but I have a feeling that Oscar and Lando might come close and get a little bit feisty with each other further on. And you know what? That is the price you pay for having two really good drivers. So I think, you know what? Maybe we give Red Bull credit. They've probably got it right there. So then, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the drama that was the 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix. And while it was an emotional wreck, I quite enjoyed the drama, and I'm pretty sure that you would have too. And I'm actually quite confident in saying we'll see a lot more of this play out for the rest of the 2024 season. So with so much to digest, please let me know what your thoughts are on this race. Let's have a chat about this in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and hey, don't forget to subscribe because it's free. Until next time, check out these videos here and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.